phone at home if you hear strange noises. Remember, whatever happens, don't look up. I am an international student. This year is my first time leaving my hometown for a foreign country. Due to some visa issue, I arrived right before the start of the new semester. And upon my arrival, all the nicer accommodations close to school are already taken. Being unfamiliar with the place, I didn't want to live too far away. Finally, I came across a rental ad on a local forum. It was a very old unit building, and the landlord was an old man who is a heavy smoker. As he toured me around, the room filled with dense smoke from his incessant cigarettes. I was choked and couldn't think straight. Plus, I don't really have any other choices. So I hastily signed the lease contract in a daze. It wasn't until nightfall, when I stood in front of the unit with my luggage, that I realized it might have been a mistake. The building seemed to have been built in the last century and had become dilapidated after decades of wind and rain. The exposed red brick walls were covered with half-dead vines, and the windows of the corridor were covered with a thick layer of dust. Even during the day, very little sunlight could penetrate. The corridor was not only dark, but also filled with cobwebs, blown by the wind, hung like cotton. There's pervasive scent of a damp, musty odor mixed with some foul smell, waft out of the building and into my nose. I hold on to my breath, trying to drag my heavy luggage up the dim, narrow, and damp corridor to my new home on the second floor. Although dilapidated, the interior facilities of the corridor are still relatively complete. The lights are voice-controlled. As soon as I placed my suitcase on the steps, the dim lights were triggered, illuminating the dim hallway instantly. The walls are covered with advertisements, and the intertwined and stacked wires seem to come alive under the flickering lights, squirming towards me incessantly. In a daze, I felt like I had been swallowed by a giant monster, and everything before me was its digestive system preparing to consume me. Soon, I arrived at the second floor, but I didn't rush to open the door. Instead, I leaned against the wall, catching my breath. Despite the modest height of the second floor, those heavy luggage made every step particularly difficult. The wall behind me was chilling, and the cold seeped through my clothes, making me shiver involuntarily. Despite the sunny weather outside, inside the building felt like a separate world, silent and icy, devoid of vitality. It was then that I realized I hadn't heard any sound all the way here. The building was deadly quiet. But just as I was about to open the door, I finally heard some footsteps coming from upstairs. The sound was light, with a slight squeak of shoes against the floor. The person walking seemed to be deliberately muffle their footsteps, as if he's afraid of disturbing something. As I turned my head, I saw a middle-aged man with messy hair and an unkempt beard hiding at the corner of the staircase's corner upstairs, revealing only half of his face to me. Hi, I just moved in," I greeted the neighbor upstairs timidly, but he remained expressionless. After a moment, he raised his hand and pointed to the door of my house. "You live here?" I nodded, and immediately, a strange expression appeared on the man's face before he withdrew his head back. I ignored him and entered the room. As I stepped in, a potent mix of musty and foul odors assaulted my senses. I instantly understood why the landlord had smoked incessantly while showing me the room, probably to mask this smell. I opened all the windows, trying to ventilate the room, but the smell persisted. Suddenly, an itch tickled my nose, and I found a long hair between my fingers. Then, I noticed more hair in the crevices of the window frames. These strands, aged and entangled, occupied every overlooked corner of the room. As night fell, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Was it really this hard to leave home alone? I held back tears, feeling nothing but frustration and bitterness. I couldn't seem to adapt to the room temperature either. Beneath the covers, I felt excessively warm, sweating profusely. However, as I uncovered myself, a chilling draft embraced me, causing shivers. The continual fluctuations between hot and cold only heightened my agitation. It wasn't until the early hours of the morning that I finally managed to feel drowsy. Just as I closed my eyes to drift off, I heard a piercing and eerie noise from upstairs. It sounded like someone dragging heavy furniture wrapped in cloth across the floor, with each movement followed by a dull thud upon impact. The noise was sporadic, with long intervals between each occurrence. Though not loud, in the eerily quiet night, it instantly robbed me of any sleep. I covered my face with the blanket and plugged my ears, but the sound persisted, tormenting my nerves incessantly. Finally, I cannot bear it any longer. The exhaustion and frustration accumulated throughout the day surged within me. Without hesitation, I got out of bed and went upstairs. After several knocks, the rusty iron door creaked open slowly, revealing a pale face with a scruffy beard peeking out from behind. It dawned on me that the man living upstairs was the same middle-aged man I had encountered earlier. "Hey, what are you dragging furniture around for in the middle of the night? If you can't sleep, neither can I." I angrily confronted him. But upon hearing my words, the man's face turned even paler. "You heard it?" he asked. Angered even more, I replied. "Of course. How could I not hear it?" Before I could finish, the man seemed to go mad, pushing the door open and rushing downstairs, leaving me perplexed. I stepped into his house, finding it unexpectedly tidy, or more accurately, minimalistic. Apart from a few large pieces of furniture, the place was empty. I looked around, unable to imagine what kind of furniture he could be dragging around. But if not him, then where was the strange noise coming from? With a sense of disbelief, I returned to my own house. But as soon as I sat down at the table, the sound started again. I leaned my head back against the chair back and screamed in despair. But as I looked up, I suddenly noticed a few scratches appearing out of nowhere on the ceiling. At that moment, a horrifying thought emerged in my mind. It dawned on me that the sound might not be coming from upstairs, but had been within this room all along. Accompanied by this realization, I held my breath and slowly lifted my head. Then, I saw a limbless woman clinging to the ceiling, gnawing firmly with her teeth. She wriggled forward, biting into each spot, using the strength of her teeth to drag herself along. It seemed she noticed my gaze as she slowly turned to me, still biting the ceiling, mumbling incomprehensibly, "Save me, save me." Later, I learned that the room I lived in once housed a woman who had been attacked by intruders. When the intruders gone, she had used her teeth to drag herself across the floor seeking help, tragically succumbed to blood loss inside the house.